able to hear me loud and clear. If you are able to hear my voice and see my video, could you please comment number one on the Zoom chat so that I know that I am coming in clearly for everyone here? Welcome to the first of our series for catechists and Catholic educators. We are very happy to see you here. And I know a lot of people are tuning in from different parts of the Philippines. Could you please comment there on the Zoom chat where you're tuning in from so I can properly acknowledge and greet everyone here? Very good. I see a lot of number ones on our group chat, signifying that you can hear me loud and clear. I want to greet some people I'm seeing here from Mount Carmel Parish in Project 6. I hope I read that right. Lorenzo Ruiz Parish of Laguna. I know that we have here the teachers of Paref Southridge and Paref Springdale. Thank you very much for allotting this afternoon for this conversation, this dialogue that we're going to do. And I just want to encourage everyone, as a reminder, you can still register to the different sessions that Mr. Rentoy and Catalyst for Character Formation would be offering for the rest of our series. All right, we have a lot of people coming in from, we also have people from Paraf Rosemont, Diocese of Cubao. All right, Diocese of Malolos even. Hello. Hello po sa inyo. All right. And we also have our friends from Pasig City, from Baguio City, from La Union, Santa Mesa, and our friends from MFC. Hello, Kuya EJ, our friends from the Missionary Families for Christ. And I am very much honored to be one of the speakers, to be one of the sharers in this series of webinars for all of us who have been given this humbling privilege to be witnesses of our one holy Catholic and Apostolic faith. And for our first talk in this series, I was tasked to talk about the whole truth and nothing but the truth. How can we, as educators, share, live, and defend the faith in a way that is clear and confident? How to share the faith with clarity and conviction. So let's share my screen for everyone. And allow me to introduce myself. For those of you who are seeing me for the first time, my name is Burns. That is short for John Bernard. That's B-E-R-N-Z. Remember the E, remember the Z. Very easy. My full name is Burns Ordonez Caasi, and I am a friend of Mr. Rentoy. We are both from Sarangani Study Center, where we help out in the formation of young senior high school and college students here in our part of the world, which is Manila U-Belt area. So I am from Unboxing Catholicism. It's a podcast that has been around for 5 years already. It's also a YouTube channel. And I also work for an app called Hallow. And as I've mentioned, I'm very excited to spend this time with you. I was, for those of you who are not yet familiar with my story, and I think a lot of you are in that situation now. I used to be an anti-Catholic Protestant, no? So I told my mom at one point to burn the statues of the saints because I didn't believe in this saints that Catholics love to talk about. And when I became a Catholic, that's when the Lord has done a lot of surprising things in terms of ministry life, because I didn't expect that I'll be doing Catholic content as a podcaster, as a YouTuber, and at the same time as a speaker, and now as someone who helps out information activities like this. If you are curious to know about the full extent of my conversion story, I invite you to watch the full testimonial that was published by Shalom World from India, and get a free ebook from Unboxing Catholicism. Just take a screenshot of this page and visit later unboxingcatholicism.com/story. And by the way, I want to know, can everyone see my slides clearly? Can you just please type number one again if you are seeing my slides without any distractions? There you go. Thanks for the confirmation. And shortly after becoming a Catholic, I found myself also doing some YouTube content. And one of the things that I did not expect was to be in a dialogue with an atheist that got viral in 2019. So you can actually still search this on YouTube. You can type in my name, Burns Caasi, Atheist Dialogue, and you will see this 20-minute video, which was the final cut from a conversation that lasted for 2.5 hours. And as I've mentioned earlier, I have a YouTube channel called Unboxing Catholicism, and our mission is very simple, and that's to help you defend the faith clearly without being preachy, which is also the ethos of what we are going to talk about today. I am just curious, is anyone familiar with Unboxing Catholicism or Hallow? If you're familiar with Unboxing Catholicism, please just type letter U in the chat box. And if you are familiar with the Hallow app, this is my employer. This is where I'm working at. And this is also the main mission that I'm pursuing apart from the personal apostolate of Unboxing Catholicism. So if you know both of this, you just type both letters. There you go. I see some people who are already familiar with the Hallow app and my podcast, Unboxing Catholicism. You know, it's such a very exciting project that whenever people ask me, Burns, what do you do for a living? I always joke by saying I work with Jesus. And true enough, no, we work with Jonathan Rumi. He's the guy who plays Jesus in The Chosen. And I would assume that majority of people in the room are already familiar with Hallow. There you go. I see a lot of letter H on our chat. And I wanted to play a video that shows what Hallow can do. But I want to know first, can you please type number 3 if this is your first time hearing about the Hallow app? Okay, again, can you please type number 3 if this is your first time hearing about the Hallow app? There you go. I'm so happy that there are first-time hearers of the Hallow app, and I am very excited to share with you. Let me just redo the sharing to make sure the audio will come in clearly. I am very excited to share with you what the Hallow app is and what it can do to help us revolutionize our prayer life. So please enjoy this short video. Oops. Okay. I'm not sure if it's going to play. If it doesn't play, it's okay. All right. Probably there's something that I did not set up quite correctly and it didn't play, but it's okay. Hallow is the #1 Catholic prayer app in the world today. Thanks be to God. We're not saying that to brag, but we just want to shout out to the good Lord who has chosen unworthy servants that we are to pursue this mission. So if you are having trouble sleeping, if you are having trouble with your prayer life, you can't keep up a habit, you can't be consistent with your spirituality, Hallow is the app that can help you stay focused. So later, probably at the end of the video, I will be able to share at the end of the talk, I'll be able to share with you the video that I want to play. So I see here Father Franz Dizon introduced us to this app. Thanks be to God. Father Franz Dizon is working with us in the Hallow app as the host of our daily reflections. And now I just want to share the good news of where this apostolate is right now. And I just want to quickly share with you the stats of what we have been doing in the past 3 years since I started working for Hallow. So as of now, thanks be to God, ladies and gentlemen, we have more than 20 million downloads worldwide. And just last May, hear me out, ladies and gentlemen, we just surpassed 900 million prayers completed using the Hallow app. When I started working for Hallow in 2022, we only had around 400,000 downloads in the Philippines. And right now, as we speak, dear friends, we now have 2.6 million downloads. If you're not yet part of Hallow, this is your sign to be part of this growing community of prayer and fellowship. And now, I'm happy to tell you that we are expanding our content into English and Tagalog and Cebuano, and now we're also about to license content in Kapampangan, Ilocano, and Hiligaynon. And just this January, if you've been following me on social media, you might have known that I started a new journey. It's a new project, a new life project. And last January, I started my Master of Arts in Philosophy here at the University of Santo Tomas. And I just want to tell you that this move really helped me learn more about evangelization, about apologetics. And I'm really, really excited to share this with you. Another exciting development that I had in life recently that I want to share with you about is I moved into a center of Opus Dei called Sarangani Study Center, which is just 3-minute or 5-minute walk from UST. And here we're able to experiment on different methods of evangelization, different ways of sharing the faith to young people. And Man and I, together with the Catalyst team and the people in Sarangani, have been very, very immensely blessed by the presence of these young men who are just eager to unbox the faith so that they can live it out and defend it clearly without being preachy. But you know what? Another thing that I wanted to share with you, because of my master's studies, what I've been doing for the past 10 years as a speaker, or for the past 5 years as a Catholic speaker, I'm now able to integrate, synthesize, and formalize into something more academic. So since I started my MA in philosophy, I decided that my thesis will be about apologetics in evangelization. And here we are, thanks be to God. I think it's the Holy Spirit on the move. I've been writing a lot of academic journals as part of my requirements. I haven't published any of this yet, but I'm very excited to share with you this afternoon the new learnings, the new findings that I have in terms of evangelization, in terms of defending the faith. You know, I think to date, I've written 6 academic papers, again, not yet published, not peer-reviewed, but just as a synthesis of what I've been learning on evangelization. But all of these 6 papers are just about this one big question. What is this question, ladies and gentlemen? It's how can we best discover, teach, and defend the Catholic faith with clarity and charity? And I think this question is relevant for each and every one of us who are teaching religion. May I know who are the teachers here? Meaning school teachers. Can you please comment letter T if you are a school teacher, letter C if you are a catechist, or letter P if you are a priest, letter N if you are a nun. I just want to have a feel of how many people, how many trailblazers and modern heroes of the church we have in the house today. There you go. So no matter what we do, no matter where we're coming from, ladies and gentlemen, I know that we are about one thing, and that's to make Jesus shine. And that's to give people the chance for them to appreciate the church for what she is. And you know, I don't know if Mr. Rentoy really planned it this way, but today is very, very providential. I just realized yesterday because August 9 is the memorial of one of the new saints that I just learned about, who became one of my instant favorites. Her name is Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, or Saint Edith Stein. We are celebrating her life today, her legacy, and her martyrdom. You know, just a little bit of a story with you. I didn't know anything about masters in philosophy when I started studying in UST. And last January, when I was looking at the list of subjects, I didn't know what to take. For one, philosophy was not my undergraduate course. My undergraduate course in University of Asia and the Pacific was actually psychology, education, and business all rolled into one. But then when I was about to do my enrollment last January, I looked at the subjects, and there was one name that stood out, and that was the name Edith Stein. And I know I've heard her name somewhere a long time ago, but I didn't know who she was. So what I did, like any modern man would do, I took a picture of the course list, and then I asked Google and ChatGPT about who Edith Stein was. And then when I learned that she's a convert to the faith, I was sold. I knew I would take this class. And then when I did some research, just for me to be able to have some more familiarity with what she did or what she thought, I realized and I discovered that she was a teacher, or she was rather a philosopher who focused on the notion of empathy. And before I started my master's journey, I told the Lord that I want to use my master's degree to be able to serve the church. And right there and then, I took the subject Edith Stein because I know there was something in her life and her philosophy that will help me and help all of us defend the faith clearly without being preachy. So, a little bit about Saint Edith Stein. She was born in 1891, even before World War I. By the way, I want to know who here is familiar with Saint Edith Stein already. Okay, can you please comment letter E if you're familiar with Edith Stein? Again, number 1, if this is the first time you're hearing about this wonderful, wonderful saint. So let me just have a feel of the house. Okay, a lot of us are first timers. There you go. My goal is after this session, you would be so inspired by Saint Edith Stein, and you would actually watch YouTube videos, watch the movie about her life, and even try reading her works. And so Edith Stein, I would just summarize her life in one slide. I know this doesn't do justice, but she's a convert and a philosopher saint. Born before World War I, she's the youngest of 11 siblings. She was of Jewish descent, no, but the family moved to Europe already. They didn't come from Israel. They didn't come from the Holy Land. And at age 15, she decided she didn't need God and she doesn't want to follow the Lord, and she became an atheist. But here's the kicker. One day, her friends from I don't know where, from her friends probably, oh no, I now remember, her friends from the philosophical circle invited her for a sleepover. And guess what? When she visited the friend's house, she actually found a very interesting book that caught her attention. This was the biography of Saint Teresa of Avila. And she read that at age 30. And after reading that overnight, she told herself, this is the truth. I'm going to become a Catholic. You know what she did the next day, or probably a few days after that? She went to the parish priest of where she was living, and then she told the priest, Father, please baptize me. I want to become a Catholic. The priest, who just celebrated Mass, was so shocked. He didn't know who Edith Stein was, and he was really wondering where she came from. And then Edith said, "You know, Father, I read the life of Saint Teresa of Avila, and I am convinced that this is the true faith, and I want to become Catholic now." So you could say she was a little bit excited, even stubborn at one point. And then the priest said, you know, you can't just become a Catholic just like that. You need to go through classes. And then you know what St. Edith Stein say? You know what she said? Quiz me, Father. I can answer anything doctrinal. And then the rest is history. So, dear friends, Edith Stein continued pursuing philosophy. She became a philosopher and even some sort of a political activist. And at age 42, she entered the Carmelite Sisters. That was 1933, just a little after World War I, approaching World War II. And she was martyred in Auschwitz at age 50, August 9, 1942. Now, what is the relevance of Saint Edith Stein in our pursuit of defending, teaching, and proclaiming the faith with clarity and conviction? Hear me out, dear friends. It's because her dissertation called On the Problem of Empathy sets the foundation on how we can do this practice more effectively. You see, my dear friends, I want to highlight something very important. We have a huge problem in the way we teach the faith to our young children, or two extremes. Do you know what this is? Do you want to know? Please type number 2. If you want to know the two distortions in teaching the faith, I'm so excited to share this with you. I have the best audience in the world. So please give yourselves tap on the shoulders. Okay, you guys are very participative and I love that. So there are two distortions that we have to be very aware of. The first is watering down. So what is watering down? It's about diluting or omitting essential truths of the Catholic faith. Why? To avoid discomfort or controversy. So what are the signs of watering down of the faith? Well, for one, out of fear of offending or losing people, some of us, myself included, I can have this tendency, would skip hard doctrines like moral teaching, sacraments, and only focus on the safe topics so that we can be more approachable. So that's the problem of watering down. Disrupts the students the fullness of the gospel message. Or probably we overemphasize on the niceness. The tone is always agreeable, but truth becomes secondary. And the problem with this is it risks making the faith sound like a generic moralism rather than a divine revelation. I'm sure at one point in your lives, you have met Catholics who are all about the feel-good, emotional kind of high in terms of approaching the faith. And let's just focus on the niceness without really the hard truths of our faith. And again, avoiding hard teachings or hard feelings, we tend to skip topics like sin, repentance, or moral absolutes, especially in terms of sexuality, and it leaves the faithful spiritually unnourished. And because of this, when we water down the way we present the faith, we leave people with a vague idea of the teachings of the church. Students walk away with a fuzzy sense. It's a fuzzy kind of feeling. It's not really a solid grasp. A fuzzy sense of God loves you, yes, but without a clear context of why and how that love actually calls us to conversion. So do you agree with this watering down of the faith, which can happen in the church, in the parish, or in the school where you are working at, or probably Some of us may feel that at one point in our lives, we've fallen into this temptation. If you agree with this, type number one in the group chat. There you go. Now, another problem is the opposite extreme. The opposite extreme is really weaponizing the faith. So how does this happen? Well, if we present the Catholic faith as something that we own, and if we it feels like it's a stone that we want to hurl at other people, and we present the faith in a harsh, superior, or argumentative way that sounds that we want to insult or that wounds instead of heals, that is truth without love. If it sounds more like a prosecutor than a shepherd, if we are like waiting for our students or for our friends to commit a mistake just for us to prove someone is wrong, then that is the harsh tone and the judgmental aspect of weaponizing the faith. And what do we mean by no pastoral sensitivity? It's the one that fails to consider the wounds, the backgrounds, or the readiness to receive the message. A lot of times we get so passionate about one topic of the faith that we just want to share about this thing without realizing that the other person listening to us come from a different story, background, and more importantly, he or she is dealing with a wound or trauma that we are not aware of. Can you please type the word wound? W-O-U-N-D. Sugat. This is very important for us as Catholic educators. For us to defend the faith with clarity and conviction, it's not enough for us to know the teachings of the faith. My dear friends, I'm sure most of you, all of you 104 others in the Zoom room, you know way more than I do when it comes to the catechism and the doctrine of the faith. And that is a wonderful thing. But probably one thing I can contribute to our reflection this afternoon is for us to think of how can we better present the things that we know. I'll give you a clear example. I remember when I was a new Catholic, I was so passionate about the sacrament of confession that when a Protestant friend approached me and he told me, confession is not biblical. It's actually, an invention of the church. And I went on defending confession from a biblical standpoint. And then later on in the conversation, this other friend told me, I know what you're saying, but I don't buy it. You see, when I was a Catholic, I went to confession and I really had a bad experience of a priest scolding me, of a priest trying to make me feel worse than myself or worse about myself. I know a friend, his dad converted out of the church because when he was so down, he went to a confessional and he was crying. He was so desperate looking for some wisdom. And then the priest at the other side of the confessional just said, "Are you drunk?" So, my friends, these are the things that we want to avoid. We have to recognize that the students that we are dealing with are wounded, just as we are also wounded in one way or another. You see, when I started studying more philosophical groundings for apologetics, I also got myself studying more about the psychology behind dialogue. And that's when I started realizing that all of us may be experiencing some trauma or wounds. And we need to consider this when we deal with people. That's why we have to be pastorally sensitive. And we have to approach the faith and present it in a sense that it does not wound, but it heals. No? So how does this happen practically? Let's say you are in a parish, you're a catechist. Someone goes to you, father, sister, ate, kuya, I had premarital sex with my girlfriend or boyfriend. Instead of shaming this person, instead of telling and moralizing, instead of saying, you've done wrong, go to confession, you are sinful, etc., etc., let's just hug the person first. Let's listen to the story behind the fall. And let's try to encounter the other as a human person. So I think these are the two extremes that we want to avoid. And now that I am developing a thesis, again, it's still bare bones. And by the way, I encourage you to please type in your questions, your thoughts, and your reflections as I go through this talk, because I would read them one by one later so that we can have a more enriched conversation. I don't want to be just a teacher, quote unquote. In fact, I'm not going to teach anything new here. All I'm going to do is to share with you my story, to share with you my struggles, to share with you my mistakes, so that all of us can reflect and learn from it. So now that I am doing some philosophical study of apologetics and evangelization, I came up with a framework. Can we all type that word framework, which is very important in the work of sharing the faith? A framework on how we can actually defend the faith clearly without being preachy, or how to teach doctrine with clarity and conviction. And I call this the 6 Ds of transformative evangelization, or you can put here the 6 Ds of transformative education, the 6 Ds of transformative doctrine classes, the 6 Ds of catechism. I want you to test these ideas because this is going to be my thesis. And I want you to tell me afterwards if this makes sense to you. And it's by no means a complete model. I'm still in the process of doing my review of related literature for this 6 Ds, and I'm happy to share this work in progress because I also need your feedback and see if this is something that makes sense. So it has 6 interconnected elements, and this 6, you could think of it as the synthesis of everything that I have learned in evangelization in my last 10 years of doing evangelization and apologetics. Now, let's approach this one by one. First is disposition, which is the bedrock and the foundation of all evangelization. My dear friends, I've met someone when I was new in apologetics. He sent me an email. He asked me, Brother Burns, how can I be part of Unboxing Catholicism? Because I really want to be an apologist. And I replied and I told this person, I commend your desire to serve the church, but I'm just curious, what makes you want to be an apologist? The reply to me? If you want to know the reply, type letter R. Forgive me if I do these things because I just want to make sure everyone is still connected and engaged. When we are in a Zoom activity, probably it may feel isolating, but I want you all to feel that we're just in one room having fun together. So this guy told me, Brother Burns, you see, all of my life, I've been bullied because a lot of people do not show me respect because of my defects. I don't have a lot of friends, and I think if I go into apologetics and if I know enough Bible verses, my friends will start respecting me. Dear friends, unfortunately, that is not supposed to be our motivation for apologetics, evangelization, or teaching of the faith. So probably we can take this moment together right now, my dear Catholic friends. Why do we want to be a Catholic educator? Probably if you have a piece of paper beside your device, you can write that note, that question on the top of your note, and then try to list your personal reasons so that whenever you feel like you're tempted to seek human respect, some of us go through what we call the study circles. And one of the things that we ask ourselves in the examination of conscience is, do I allow myself to be dominated by human respect? Or meaning, do we want to be seen elevated in front of others, or to be thought of as someone highly to be praised? Probably we have to purify our intention. And this position is a very, very important starting point. Because, my dear friends, in teaching the faith with clarity and conviction, I would like to tell you this, and I'm sure you have heard this from many other greater speakers many, many times over. The heart of the matter is the matter the heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. I'll repeat that. The heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. Please write it down on your notebooks, type it on your note apps. The heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. Whatever is in our hearts, my dear friends, it will dictate the rest of how we are going to approach this mission that God has given us with. Yeah, so that's the first D, the disposition. Okay. Right. I want to check our chat just to see if everyone is hearing me. Am I lagging to you? Am I still connected? Can you please just confirm? Okay, so I see that our signal is still okay. Very good. So that's the first D. And when I started studying the life and works of Edith Stein, I have realized that there is one important concept that is foundational for us to have the right disposition for evangelization, and that is the dissertation of Edith Stein, which is empathy. Now, friends, let's have some audience participation. I want to know how you understand the word empathy. Can you just type in one phrase or one word that would more or less give us an idea of how you have understood or how you understand the word empathy, which is foundational to a proper disposition in teaching the faith. All right, so let's try to read some answers from our friends here. It said someone said being in the shoes of the other person. Okay. The next thing, the next input I see here is compassion. Okay, very good. Putting myself in another person's shoes. Care, not to be judgmental. These are all correct. Okay, pakikiramay, being aware of others' feelings. Compassion, pakikisama, to know what the other person is going through. Being with with another person's shoes. Okay, so one thing is very common to all of our definitions. No, it's like knowing what the other person is feeling and being with another person's shoes. You know what's interesting? When we start studying the notion of empathy according to St. Edith Stein, she destroys that definition of empathy as being in another person's shoes. I was really surprised by that because all of my life I thought empathy is like that. You go to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, you see empathy is being in another person's shoes, right? Here's the thing. And this is a suggestion from St. Edith Stein, which we can take or leave. Can take it or leave it. She says, are you listening to me, my dear friends? Can you hear this? Very good. This is her important dissertation topic. Edith Stein says, we can never be in another person's shoes because your identity can never intermingle with that of another. You can never be in another person's shoes because your you can never be mixed up with another I. So again, that's a little bit philosophical, but what she is just trying to say is there is danger in thinking that we could be in another person's shoes because we can never be sure we are actually understanding what goes in another person's shoes. So in other words, my dear friends, for Edith Stein, at least, not the dictionary definition, she challenges us to think that if we can never really totally understand how another person feels, thinks, or sees the world, then how do we then deal with another person? Isn't it an interesting question? If hindi ko malalaman kung ano talaga ang kabuuan ng iniisip o nararamdaman ng aking kapwa, paano ko dapat makitungo sa kanya? And this is going to play an important role for us religion teachers. So what did she say? Well, here are the implications of her conclusion. According to St. Edith Stein, because we can never fully, totally understand the totality of what another person thinks, we just need to recognize the other as a person and not as a project. We should recognize the other person as a person, not as a project. What does this mean? No, it can be a little bit abstract. Well, let's break it down a little bit more. According to Edith Stein, since empathy means we recognize the other as a person who is separate and distinct from us, whom we can never totally change because only God can change him, we need to receive the other as he or she is now, not as we have imagined him to be. For example, okay, but before I give the example, I'll go to the third point of what empathy means or what disposition means according to Edith Stein. According to her, if we are going to be empathic, if we are going to deal with others with empathy, with proper disposition, we need to refine our hearts to purify our intentions in meeting another person. So those are all theories, right? abstract. Now, how do we see it in practical action? For example, we have a student who tells us, I don't believe in God. Okay, how do we react to this person? Do we immediately try to disprove intellectually why the other person does not believe in God? Or do we try to understand what was the story or what is the story of this person that led to that? Right? So if we recognize the other person as a person, we will not turn them as projects in our heads. What do we mean by projects? Okay, this person, I will convert you. I will talk to you so that eventually you will see the world as I do because you're wrong. I am right. Disposition, my dear friends. So if we are approaching our students in this way, St. Edith Stein is challenging us. Recognize your students, where they're coming from, and start journeying with them from where they are. So, does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense to you. Probably we can we can hit this home if you are a young person, a young professional trying to get into a dating relationship. Just last, I think 3 days ago, I had a dinner with a friend. The three of us were talking, and one of the friends started opening up about a guy she is dating, and she is so not really frustrated, but she keeps on talking about someone whom she's dating, and she wants to bring him to the church. And we asked her, how come you have chosen to date this person even if he is not like this and that? And then she said, because I think I can change him, because I think I can teach him the faith, because I think I can convert him. So is that a bad thing? I don't want to give an answer to that, but that's something we need to reflect on. Probably we can talk a little bit more about this in the Q&A. But St. Edith Stein wants to challenge that thought because for her, real empathy means meeting another person where he or she's at, and taking conversion from there without forcing the other person, without turning him into a project or someone we could manipulate. So, we'll go to the other D's and we can get to the first D later. I don't want to overload us just with disposition, but probably, hopefully, later this will make more sense to us. So, what comes next? Okay, fine, Burns. I already have the proper disposition. I don't want to convert my workmate. I don't want to force people to become Catholics. I don't want to shove the faith down to the throats of my students. What's next? Of course, we already know this. I already told you earlier that you know more about me. You know more about this than I do. It's about doctrine. For us to be able to teach the doctrine with clarity and conviction, we need to know what to talk about. We cannot give what we do not have. And so, my dear friends, my encouragement with all of us is to deepen our doctrinal formation. Let's avoid acne. Can you type this in the chat? I just want to know if you're still listening. Baka nakatulog na kayo doon sa discourse about St. Edith Stein. Okay, what is acne? Does anyone know what acne is? Alam ko na yan. Thank you, Betty. For us Catholic educators, even if we already know someone, our internal posture should be that of, I can still discover something new about this topic if I listen to this another person giving his perspective about it. So let's avoid acne or alam ko na yan. Commit to lifelong formation. A lot of the friends I have here, they go through a lifelong formation through their communities. Probably it's in Opus Dei, in the seminary, in the parish. Wherever you get your formation, I just want to encourage you. Let's get lifelong formation so that we can be effective evangelists. Of course, I also want to encourage people, if you are a Catholic educator and you haven't really read the Bible just yet, or you haven't taken any courses to deepen your understanding of the Bible, this is very basic. I encourage you, for you to be fully convinced that the Catholic faith is the fullness of truth, please, my dear friend, let's unbox the Bible. Let's read the Catechism. There are resources that can help you with that. And I want to emphasize this for Catholic teachers. Let us be faithful children of the Second Vatican Council. As Catholic educators, we are called to be sowers of peace and unity, not sowers of disunity, doubt, and confusion. So if you have friends in your school who are very critical of the Second Vatican Council or the popes that came after that, or who are concluding immaturely or prematurely that the whole church is a failure because of Vatican II, we have something to pray for. Again, we meet people where they are, we pray for them, we journey with them, and we try to dialogue with them. Actually, that's the next D that we're going to talk about. And, guys, we have a new pope. Another thing that's very important for us is if we could be familiar with the magisterium of the church, go to the Vatican website and actually learn from what the Pope is actually teaching us every single week. Did you know that you can actually read the full text of the speeches, the homilies, and all the statements that the Pope makes, and we can find them all in the Vatican website. So, saints, in one of the future sessions, we'll talk more about the saints, but I'll leave it at that for now. Every day, we celebrate a saint. Today, we celebrate Edith Stein. And I encourage you to unbox the lives of these saints so that we can also see how they themselves have taught the faith with clarity and conviction. According to Saint Jose Maria Escriva, ours should be the piety of children, but sure doctrine of theologians. So in other words, we must be both humble and well-informed. For us to have piety of children, we have to have the disposition of children. But for us to have the doctrine of theologians, we have to live the virtue of study. Next, my dear friends, dialogue. Can you type 3D to signify the third D, which is dialogue? When we talk to another person, my dear friends, let us not be quick to give answers. I know some people who are very concerned about the young generation, that when they see them not studying or when they see them doing something different from what they got used to, they will immediately tell the other person, alam mo, nung bata kami, hindi kami ganyan mag-aral. Alam mo, mali ang ginagawa mo. Alam mo, hindi ka matututo ng ganyan. Alam mo, mapapariwara ang buhay mo kapag kaganyan ka. Now, we hear this a lot, right? Probably we grew up hearing these words from our elders, or probably we're the ones doing that to our younger members of the family, younger friends or relatives, or even students. My dear friends, we are being encouraged to learn how to dialogue. And what is the most important skill for us to learn how to dialogue? Can anyone guess? Among these three that I have flashed here, and this is non-exhaustive, what do you think is the most important skill to learn dialogue? Okay, listening is important. Okay, very good. Right. Listening with the intent to understand and not with the intent to reply. Have you ever met a friend, or do you have a friend who always has something, who always have something to reply, who always have something to say even if before you finish talking? That friend could be annoying, right? Sometimes I could be that friend, I admit. And when I read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 5 is very powerful. Stephen Covey, the author, said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So how do we understand? So probably you think listening is the most important skill when it comes to dialogue. Let me tell you, friends, there is another skill equally or probably more important. What is it? Can anyone guess? We need to learn how to ask the right questions. We need to learn how to ask the right questions, my dear friends. Sometimes we forget to do this, and we are quick on judging the intention of others. Something happened recently with one of the persons I know, and then I was ranting to another friend, and I told him, I want to keep distance from this relative of mine because I feel like so and so is doing this to me. And I was full of, assumptions. And then this other friend of mine asked me, how sure are you that you're right? And that was a challenging self-reflection question. And when we dialogue with another person, this is important. Just this afternoon, I had lunch with someone who told me, Burns, my girlfriend is not Catholic. And whenever I go to their church, the pastors would surround me and ask me different questions and tell me, not even ask, tell me different things. And somehow I feel like I'm unequipped to answer them because I don't know a lot about scriptures just yet. Do you feel that way also, my dear friends? Can you type letter A if you agree with this? That you feel a little sort of insecurity when you talk to a student or someone who knows more about the Bible than you do. So I told my friend, you don't really have to know a lot about the Bible for you to engage in dialogue. You just need to ask questions. For example, if someone says, venial sins are not in the Bible. The Catholic Church just invented that. That's actually the example given by my friend. So you may not know the Bible verse that will prove that venial sins are biblical, but you can ask these questions. That's interesting. You think that venial sins are not biblical. Why do you think a church such as the Catholic Church would believe in such a thing? Do you think there's a possibility that this is based off of something from the Bible? Of course, your dialogue partner will say, no, it's not in the Bible, etc., etc. Or you could ask something like, yeah, interesting that the word venial sin is not in the Bible, but what do you think of the Bible when it tells us about a sin that does not lead to death? So, in other words, if we learn how to ask the right questions, we make the other person reflect on where he or she is coming from. Probably, okay, the other person who's contradicting the faith has just heard of these misconceptions but did not really give much time to think about it. The same goes to our students, my dear friends. If our students ask us a question and we don't know the answer, we can always ask, "What do you think?" Okay, can you write WDYT? What do you think? That is a powerful question. And if someone makes a claim about a Catholic doctrine that they have misunderstood, the best question to ask this person is, what makes you think, what led you to that conclusion? So you see, by asking questions, we diffuse tensions and we ask the other person to provide more context about what he's saying so that we can understand better where the other person is coming from. Right? Next, discernment. Another equally important thing, my dear friends, when it comes to defending the faith with clarity and conviction, is to grow in discernment. So I encourage everyone, don't just attend seminars. Don't just read books. Find a spiritual mentor from your community, from your parish, no? Or email Mr. Rento if you need someone to coach you and you can't seem to find someone in your area or in your community. We would love to match you with a mentor or a coach to help you grow in your spiritual life. That is something that all of us need. I meet my mentor every week, and whenever I share my frustrations with him, he gives me a lot of perspectives that somehow I think I know, but I couldn't apply. Being a Catholic educator also means we have to have deeper self-examination. And part of our discernment, my dear friends, is knowing when to be silent. For example, you want to defend the faith with clarity and conviction online, but there is someone who keeps on giving negative comments on your post or your parish post or whatever Catholic content. And a part of you wants to defend the faith. Of course, you want to be clear and high and deeply convicted in defending the faith. So you spend a lot of hours typing your responses, and then the other person would troll you. The other person will insult you, will call you names, etc. Probably that's not the best time for you to engage that person in the dialogue. Probably the other person is just out there to feel good about himself, being quote unquote right, and everyone else being wrong. So we have to know when to stop talking, when to stop the dialogue, because we need to know the power, or we need to discover the power of silence. And when can we know this? If we have an ongoing discernment, which we can practice and we can develop through spiritual direction. Another equally important thing, if we want to defend the faith with clarity and conviction, my dear friends, is to have a prayer life or a life of devotion. My dear friends, a lot of us, especially if you are a teacher, please type letter T later if you can relate with what I'm going to show you or what I'm going to share with you. When I was a teacher, there is this tendency to rush the course so that I can finish what's on the learning goals of the unit planning, the lesson plan, or the content plan. Probably there is also a temptation for all of us to just go to our office desk directly when we enter the school just because we have a lot of things to do. And probably we may not be giving a lot of time for prayer. And my dear friends, I think this is important. I realize this that the lesser I pray, the less effective I am when it comes to dealing with people, whether it's in one-on-one chats or doing online content or giving talks. Sometimes we can observe ourselves. We are more at peace if we are able to pray better. And we feel so agitated and unpeace and we not in peace and anxious whenever we are not in the state of grace or whenever we are not able to have that silent time for prayer. So I don't know, can you relate with this? Is there any do you want to share any experiences that you might have? You can feel free to put there in the chat. So my dear friends, how do we pray? Well, Saint Escriva is very practical about it. He said, have a plan. Just as we teachers have our lesson plans, we are now being encouraged to reflect. Do we also have a plan of life? Do we know the time when we are supposed to pray? Do we know the time when we are supposed to go to confession? Do we know the time when we are supposed to seek spiritual mentorship? So probably all of us know about this already, but this is a good reminder for all of us, including myself. We need to have a plan of life. We need to frequent the sacraments. And let me encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, this is something I've been rediscovering lately. Let us learn how to pray liturgically. A lot of us in this room are already into prayer. And true enough, this is important because Saint Escriva himself said, prayer is the foundation of the spiritual edifice. Prayer is all powerful. And he himself said, we have to be liturgical in our prayer life. How do we do that? Well, we have a lot of resources like the Liturgy of the Hours or the Breviary. You know, this is the official prayer of the church. And quite frankly, if you have someone who doesn't know how to pray, this is a very interesting way to pray rhythmically or to have rhythm of prayer. It comes with a morning prayer, afternoon prayer, mid-morning prayer, evening prayer, night prayer, which is very, very practical. And if you don't have the book, there are apps that can help you learn how to pray. So this is one way for us to pray liturgically, to stay in tune with the Holy Spirit so that we can be better as educators. According to Saint Escriva, and this is very practical, try to commit yourself to a plan of life and to keep to it. A few minutes of mental prayer, Holy Mass daily if you can manage it, and frequent communion. Regular recourse to confession and visiting our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament or the Tabernacle. Praying the Rosary and other marvelous devotions you can or can you know or can learn. Devotion, my dear friends, let us not forget that. And finally, if we want to defend the faith with clarity or conviction, the defense of the faith must not end when someone agrees that we are right about our understanding of Catholicism. We need to be able to mentor young people so that we can continue the cycle of empathetic or transformative apologetics. Let's document our learnings. Have a journal or organize sessions in your communities where you can share learnings so that you can also continue the process of transforming everyone in their approach in terms of evangelization. So, dear friends, these are the 6 ideas. We don't have all the time to unpack all of them, but probably I hope it gave you some sort of an overview of how we can defend the faith clearly without being preachy, or how we can defend the faith with clarity and conviction. How do we have clarity? We need the doctrine. We need to know what to say. How do we have conviction and charity? We need to have proper disposition. We need to learn how to ask the right questions in the context of dialogue. We need to learn how to deepen our sense of discernment. We need to learn when to shut up or to stop talking. And we need to learn how to make disciples out of our students. If there's one thing I learned from becoming a Protestant for more than 4 years, it's that aspect of discipleship. It's very, very important that we know how to form tomorrow's leaders for the church. Do you agree, ladies and gentlemen, with any of these? Do you think one D is more important than the other? Do you have another D that you think should be in this framework? Please let us know in the comment section. All right. I just want to know if you learned anything from our session before I can go to the next part, which is a more practical tool that all of you guys can take home. Please just put there one line or one phrase or one sentence of your realization. If you did not realize anything of that something that you got reminded about, and I'd love to read that later before we wrap up or before we go to our Q&A. So, dear friends, as you know, I work at Halo. I'm the head of Halo app in the Philippines, and I want to invite all of you to our mission to help everyone pray and find peace in God. And by that, I want you to be part of our global prayer community. As I mentioned earlier, we have more than 20 million downloads worldwide and 2 million in the Philippines. Halo is a free app. Go to your app store. You can download it for free. You can unbox and listen to more than 1,000 free prayers daily, including the rosary. But if you want to support the ministry of Halo, did you know that Halo uses the subscriptions that people donate to us every month? No, the subscriptions that we collect every month, we use it to build churches in different parts of the world, to support our religious brothers and sisters, to sustain the ministry of the church. If you want to support the church and to support the global ministry of Halo, you can also subscribe. Later, I'll give you a very special discount, and you can unlock more than 10,000 prayers and different collections in our paid or subscription version of the app. And here it is, dear friends. I would like to make it very easy for all of you. Lay people, this is for lay people because I have a different offer for religious priests, brothers, and sisters in a bit. But for lay people who are in the Zoom room or who are attending the session, I'm giving you 50% discount so that you can access everything Halo has to offer and give you that opportunity to support the mission that we have. So just go to halo.com/burns to claim your 50% discount. If you are currently a Halo user or subscriber, please comment letter H so that I would know. All right, I'm seeing some people commenting. I'm going to read the comments later. If you are interested to know about my conversion story and to download the free ebook I prepared for you, please go to unboxingcatholicism.com/story and you will watch a 22 or 24-minute clip well produced by Shalom Media about my story of how I was born as a Catholic, baptized into the faith, left the church, became an anti-Catholic, and now finding myself as a Catholic speaker serving you in this webinar. And as promised, for our priests, seminarians, consecrated brothers and sisters, we are happy to give you free lifetime subscription. Just go to halo.com/religious or halo.com/epriest to sign up. Honesty system lang po para lang po ito sa mga religious brothers and sisters natin, pati sa mga priests and actively enrolled seminarians. And before I end the slides and go to your comments, I just want to leave you with one chunk of text, which is a statement that I always end with in all of my talks. Dear brothers and sisters, everything that we do as defenders of the faith, we don't own this. These are not talents that we have. These are all gifts because everything is grace. Everything is mercy. There's nothing we can boast about. What we can boast about is only the filth of our weakness and our sinfulness. But thanks be to God, despite all of those, He has called us to be witnesses. So my invitation for each and every one of you, do not be afraid to be led by God. He is calling you right now by your name. If you are an educator and if God is calling you to go deeper in your prayer life, don't be afraid to be led by God. If you are someone who's been away from the Lord is asking you, come, my son, come, my daughter. If you've been away from confession, this is your sign. This is the perfect time for you to throw yourself in the loving embrace of the Father. He is waiting for you and calling you by your name. My dear friends, we cannot give what we do not have. For us to defend the faith with clarity and conviction, We need to constantly encounter our Lord despite our weaknesses, despite the challenges that we have. Count on His grace. Don't be afraid to be led. Don't be afraid to say yes to ministry. He will be with you. The Holy Spirit is with you. God bless everyone.
Thank you so much, Burns. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today in our first of a series of 20 sessions for catechists. I already see 27 who have filled up the Google form. And if you haven't done so yet, again, I am posting it here in the chat box. Please click on the link, which will lead you to a Google form. Make sure you do not make a mistake in putting your email address, because if you put wrong spelling, you will not receive your certificate. The certificate is auto-generated. Whatever you write there is what will appear in your certificate, which is a certificate of participation to an international seminar. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Burns. We will see you
Thank
again in
you.
some other future sessions. Um, the others who have not yet clicked on the link, you can also scan the QR code now. That will also lead you to the same Google form. And if you encountered any difficulty with the Wi-Fi, I think some did, some posted um, problems regarding their connection. Just request for the link to the recording, which will be available by tonight, by sending an email to catalystpds@gmail.com. Catalystpds@gmail.com. And we will send you the, how do you call this? We will send you the link to the recording. There were two who posted here asking for the recording. Sorry, we will not be able to do that because we will not be able to post here the link to the recording. We first have to upload it in our YouTube channel. Again, thank you so much. God bless everyone. Burns, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Um, we invite you to turn on your video for our graduation picture for this first session, because some schools ask us for a proof that their teachers attended. So please turn on your video, and then we are going to record. We're going to, let me see, let's just stop